Well, let's go through some more of Robert's points about what he says. The rich teach their children that the poor and middle class do not. Main difference, you say, between the rich and poor lies in what we teach our children about
That's
money.
correct.
Really?
Very much.
And it's a mentality. It's a total way of thinking, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's really easy to change if you're willing to change the way you think. For instance, my poor dad was a very good man for Japanese. He was 6'4", very smart, academic genius. But he always said to me, you know, go to school, get good grades, get a job and work hard, save money. And my rich dad said, well, if you want to be rich, that's not the way you do it. And he, instead of working for money, my rich dad taught me how to have money work hard for me. And that's why I've only had a job 4 years of my entire life. Other than that, I'm building companies or I'm investing, and that's all I'm doing.
Well, the subject of money is taught at home, not in school, you say, because most of us learn about money from our parents, and it's only good if you have a rich dad mentality.
My message to people is, you know, why struggle for money when you don't have to? You know, it's that really simple if you have good advice. The problem is money is not taught in school. And so what we do is we oftentimes follow in our parents' footsteps. We may do different jobs, but we oftentimes follow in the same financial patterns. And my rich dad used to say, you know, he says, you can't end poverty by giving somebody money. Giving a poor person money keeps them poor longer.
Yeah.
And that's what breaks my heart, because I want to help people
change the way they think about money.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things is that I noticed between my rich dad and my poor dad was the vocabulary. My poor dad was a PhD in education, very smart man, but he had the vocabulary of a school teacher. And my rich dad had the vocabulary of a rich man. And so when I say to people, what's the first...
What do you mean by vocabulary?
Well,
I know what the word means, but what kind of vocabulary?
Well, I sit around the dinner table and listen to both dads, and one would talk about algebra and geometry and trigonometry. Nothing that ever made me any money. Mm-hmm. And my rich dad would sit there and he'd talk about return on investment, assets, liabilities, discounted cash flows, etc.
And a lot of people, you know, what you just said about your house is a liability, it's not an asset. Most people think it is their biggest investment.
Yes, and that's one of the biggest middle-class traps. They say, my banker says my house is an asset. And my rich dad would say, if you can read a financial statement, you'll see, you can read that your house is actually a liability. I'm not saying don't buy a house, and I like big houses, and I like the finer things of life. Just don't call a liability an asset. And what's trapping the middle class is they're buying liabilities they think are assets.
I like what you say in the book, which this is interesting too, because I've always been a person who lived beneath my means. Now it's kind of hard to see, it doesn't matter. But I've always been a person who, because I just was reading about how the Chevy Chevette was the worst car, one of the worst cars ever made, and I had one of those little tin cans because that was the thing that I could pay cash for and not have to, you know, pay interest and so forth. So I've always believed in living beneath the means until you could really afford to pay for stuff, mainly because I hate bills.
Right.
Just hate bills. And you say one of the mistakes that middle class and poor people do is they try to look rich.
Yes.
So those are the first people to go buy the furs, the diamonds, the big TVs, and all the stuff, correct?
Right. My rich dad called it looking good and going nowhere.
Love that. Yeah. My grandmother used to call it not a pot to piss in, but anyway, that's another thing. Kind of the same thing.
I'm glad you said that.
You heard that too. Okay, they'll edit that somewhere. But anyway, it's the same principle. You have all this stuff. I know when I see people out and they got all the stuff and all the things and but then when they go home, what?
They have bills.
They have bills.
And they worry and their health goes down and, you know, it's not worth it. The thing that I think most people don't realize is that there's only two kinds of money problems, basically. One's not enough money and one's too much money. And they're both problems. And you really you have to know how to handle too much money, as I'm sure you do right now. Otherwise, if you...
Watching it all the time. Had a bad week last week. Yeah.
But it's a different problem.
Yeah, it's a different kind of problem. Yeah.
So when you have no money, you have to have a plan to eventually have plenty of money. And then when you have plenty of money, you got to shift plans.
Yes.
And so that's why people who win the lottery all of a sudden get all this plenty of money and they go broke again.
And overwhelmed by it.
Right. And they go because they've never understood how money worked.
Well, one of the things you say is that the poor pay their bills first, the rich pay themselves first.
That's a really tough one, but it makes people kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Because the richest man in Babylon says pay yourself first. But what most people do is they pay their bills first and they never pay themselves anything. And that's a discipline I had to get into, was I'll always pay myself first, even when I had no money. And when I have all these bill collectors calling me, I use them as inspiration. You know what I mean?
Really?
Oh, when they're hounding, the government's hounding you, bill collectors calling, because I've been broke, so I can understand what it feels like to be broke. When those guys are calling you, instead of shrinking and going into the shell and eating my pizza, I use it as motivation to go out and make more money. So I used my bill collectors as motivation, and that's why I paid myself first, even though sometimes I wasn't paying.
What would you pay yourself?
I always bought assets. I'd buy a house, or I'd put money in the bank, or things like this. But it was just a habit. Exactly what you're talking about. It's up here.
It's about changing the way you think. That's what the whole book is about.
That's it, because we're our biggest asset. We're also our biggest liability.
We are.
Yeah, we are.
I know, yes. I read that.
Thank you.
Okay, during the commercial break, you said what? Stand up, say it again.
You say that you can pay yourself first, pay your bills second, but if you do that, you still can't afford to buy a house. You say you bought a house. How am I going to get somebody to loan me the money to buy a house when I can't when I can't fully pay my bills as I'm paying them now? When I'm paying the minimum payment, let's say that.
He doesn't understand the principle of pay yourself first. He's with a lot of people out there who are saying, look, I got the bill collectors calling. I'm scared to answer the phone because I don't have the money. So how am I going to now give myself money first when I got these people knocking down my door? That's what all these people are shaking their heads to.
Right.
They're thinking easy for you to say from where you're sitting now.
Well, I sell. I'm a salesman. I go to work every day and I try to sell more and more and more to make more and more money. But that money's still going to my bills, so I'm not getting called by the credit collectors.
One thing that Paul said right there, he starts a home-based business. The tax laws are written against, tax laws are not equal. And if you want, what I'm saying is you got to get educated here. So the tax laws are not equal. So if you're an employee and you work harder and harder, the government's going to take 50% no matter what. So by being a business owner, which is Paul did, he has tax advantages that the middle class and poor do not have.
That's it. The taxes are the biggest expense in your life as a salesman. The more money you make, the more the government takes. So get control of your taxes first by setting up a home-based business. Take that tax savings now, pay down debt, and buy more assets in the real estate. And you said, well, I've got credit problems. I'm not going to be able to get a loan. Find a motivated seller. Find owner financing. There's all kinds of opportunities out there. Most of society, though, will watch this show and then they'll go back to just sitting at home at night. You really have to change what you're doing in your life. If you're not happy where you're at financially, you've got to do something drastically.
Just saving money and investing is not enough. There is a complete mindset that goes on. I think that's what these people who came...
Paul was saying, because we all have the mentality in this country, you work harder, it will pay off in the end. It does not, because the government always gets theirs.
Right,
Yeah.
and then the real estate is the least taxed income you can get. So when my wife and I were struggling, we saved $6,000. We bought that house. Thing went from $46,000 to $105,000. We had $50,000.
But I think when people think of real estate, they think about the house that they would want to live in. So you start out buying something that you wouldn't necessarily want, and you use that to build more income.
And that's what she did. She bought 7.
Build more income.
That's my idea. I want to buy a 3-flat, live in the basement, rent out the top two apartments,
Good,
and
you're thinking.
have them pay my mortgage for me. Good. But I still need to come up with the original capital to buy the place.
That starts with paying yourself first.
See, that's what people should be teaching in school, because I swear to you, we've all been taught be responsible, pay your bills first so that the people don't, call you or not harassing you and so forth. What were you going to say, Paul?
I would say I was doing with the real estate what Robert's talking about, but for $300, I set up a home-based business. Anybody in this room can do that, and you're going to save money on your taxes, number one, while you're generating income on your business. Once you've got that income coming in, you can do all the real estate that you want then. So it's really just getting out there and looking at the different opportunities. $300 investment, can't beat it.